Okay, hopefully this video will be a little bit better than yesterday's. I've gotten some more light. I realized that yesterday's was kind of dark. Yesterday, hopefully I laid out a good case for prepping being the normal thing in history, and that depending on the supply grid and on big box stores and malls and grocery stores is the abnormal thing in history. Um, Once you've decided that prepping is normal and maybe you need to be prepped, the next thing to think about is priorities, because I don't think many of us can afford to just go to the store and buy one of everything and two of some things, and I doubt many of us can afford to get online and order cases of MREs. So the first thing we want to think about is, what are we prepping for? Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about prepping for the zombie apocalypse, and I'm hoping that's a joke. I'm hoping that comes from some movie or TV reference and they're not serious. And it seems like a lot of people talk about prepping for alien invasions and Lord knows what else, and I'm hoping that's just a movie reference too. I'm not playing games with prepping for something fictional. And I'm not prepping for the end of the world either, folks. If it's the end of the world, I'm going with Jesus. I don't want to stay here. But there are a lot of legitimate reasons somewhere between those two extremes for prepping. The first one being weather or natural disaster. I can well remember sitting here in this living room watching the coverage of Hurricane Katrina. It was, what, 7 years ago? And I can remember being so overwrought that I wanted to get in my car and drive to New Orleans right then and there and see if I couldn't rescue at least a few people off of those bridges. It hurt me to see those people in that kind of condition. And I can also well remember last fall watching Hurricane Sandy and people who were living in tents all winter long because their home had been destroyed and there wasn't anywhere else for them to go. I don't want to be depending on the government, and I don't want to be depending on FEMA or anything else, because their track record isn't that good. Even if they were a perfectly trustworthy organization, they're not doing the greatest job. So I would much prefer to be able to rely on myself. Other scenarios, unless you think Americans are truly better than anyone else in the world, and I don't, um, we're just as susceptible to coups and civil unrest and wars as anyone else. It's a recurring theme throughout history. It happens over and over again. We've had a very good system of government for the last couple hundred years. It's protected us a little bit, but our ancestors did live through the Civil War, and they lived through the Great Depression, and they lived through the privations of World War I and World War II. Human evil causes suffering, and you've got to be prepared to deal with it. So once you've decided what you need to prep for it, then you can start deciding how to prep for it. Here I have to worry about every 3 or 4 years we get an ice storm in late February or early March, and about every 10 years it'll take the power down for a week. So I've got to be prepped to take care of my family through that. We also have to worry about tornadoes here, and I wouldn't buy a house without a basement in this area. There's a chance here of earthquakes, but the last one was 200 years ago. It was a doozy, but we're close to the New Madrid Fault. Those are our particular things. If you're on the coast, you might have to worry about prepping for hurricanes or other different kinds of weather. But once you've decided what you need to be prepped for, then you can decide how to prep.